Hello, my Aloha tribe, and welcome to the Aloha Perspective, where you get a little bit of something and a whole lot of everything. Happy Wednesday. We're at Self Care Wednesday. I decided to go through the For Love of the Dragons Oracle deck and pick stuff that I thought would be great for Self Care Wednesday. So we'll just go through them. We'll go in order. So there's no secret or magic behind this. Just yeah, we'll just go in order and cover some things that I think are good for self care, besides the obvious. Taking care of your mental health, checking in with yourself from time to time, practicing good self care, meditation. If you want to get a massage, have some tea or coffee and just kind of sit and, watch the world go by. Whatever it is that brings you joy, that is what I am planning on doing today. Let me lower these mics a little bit because my hair seems to be getting in the way today. So, anyways, all right, let's go. Number one. Oh no, sorry, wrong card. Number one, the fledgling. The fledgling. Don't be afraid of taking a risk. Fledgling dragons will fall and stumble before they fly. The trick is to keep getting back up, dust off your wings, and try again. This is the beginning of new power, and it often looks awkward to see a fledgling take wing. But grace comes, as does skill, dexterity, and joy. Let yourself try and try again. Fall spectacularly, fail gorgeously, then get up and go again. The expansive sky is waiting. The expansive sky is waiting. So there you go. The expansive sky is waiting. So why did I choose the fledgling? Because a lot of times we'll start things and we won't finish them because it's like, well, I'm not good at this, or I didn't, do as well as I thought I would at this, or I didn't do this, or I didn't do that. But it's about taking a risk. Sometimes we're so afraid to do that we just kind of stay stagnant, right? And sometimes that can mess with our mental health. Sometimes that can mess with our self-care because we're not doing the things that we know we're capable of doing, or we're not trying the things that we want to try because we're afraid. All right. So that was the fledgling. So, just get out there, take a risk, right? Take a risk. And, I love this part. Fall spectacularly, fail gorgeously, then get up and go again. The expansive sky is waiting for you. So I love that. Fail gorgeously. But even if you do, you might succeed gorgeously, but you'll never know unless you take that risk. So the next one, the curious. Ooh, the curious. I like this one. I like them all, actually. That's why I picked them all. Let's see. Oh, you know what? I just realized I forgot to turn my TV off. So enjoy the pictures. There you go. Self-care. Enjoy the screensavers. Being in the know is overrated. Certainty is limited. But being curious, it leaves room for mystery, for surprise, for wonder. While dragons are known for great wisdom, they also keep a door open in the mind to grow their fierce intelligence with curiosity. No new relationship, business, art, or scientific invention started without curiosity. Now is the time to investigate, ask questions, open the mind and heart to approach your situation. With a dragon's eye and a curious heart, you can see what others cannot. So this kind of goes with the fledgling, right? Be curious about things. Be curious about what you don't know and what you're willing to learn and what you're willing to reach out for, because you never know what you might miss because you weren't curious enough to find out, or to go and try that new place because, well, it's like, well, what if I don't like it? And they spend all that money there, and sometimes we worry too much about the more trivial things in life. If it's something you wanted to try, go. If it's something you didn't like, well, great. Now you know. But you'll never know unless you go, because who knows? It might be the greatest thing you've ever had in your life, right? You might be like, oh. For instance, I'll give you an example. So one of my favorite places all time in this world is Michelli's in Studio City. Now, there is one in Hollywood, but Studio City is the first one I ever went to. However, being being the awkward Americans some of us are, my friends, when I first met them, including older siblings, used to call it Miss Ellie's. So I kept thinking it was like Miss Ellie's. So I'm thinking, oh, okay, it must be some really good, American fare or whatever, hamburgers, stuff like that. And I admit, all of us call it Miss Ellie's, although I think it's Michelli's. I don't, they're Italian, and I believe their father or grandfather was from Italy, and it's a family run business still. And like I said, there is one on Hollywood. Is it on Hollywood Boulevard? I want to say it's on Hollywood Boulevard. I don't think it's on Sunset. I think it's on Hollywood Boulevard. But I like the one in Studio City near Universal because, like I said, that's the first one I went to. Parking's a little bit easier, and it's both of them have a good vibe. I like them both, but like I said, Studio City was my favorite because it's my first one. But yeah, I was like, okay, well, they're like, yeah, let's go there. It's so great. I'm like, okay, it's American food. What's so great about Miss Ellie's? Turns out it was Michelle's, and turns out Shelly Marie loves Italian food. So yeah, I was just kind of like, I was so excited, but it was one of those things where it's like, well, and I wasn't good at trying new things back then. I really wasn't, and so just going was kind of like a new adventure for me. But I realized in the end that it's like, even now, I think it hits me even harder that when we're not curious, we're never going to know, right? So, be curious about things in your life. Be curious about things you want to try and things you want to do, things you might want to read, Don't worry about what other people think. So, the storyteller. Stories have power. They can shape worlds, both interior and exterior. Today, be mindful of the ones you're telling yourself and the ones you're listening to from others. Are they uplifting, encouraging, and equal to the wingspan of your potential? Or are they diminishing, debilitating, drowning in the depths of not enoughness? Listen only to the stories that are worthy of you and reflect your magnificent nature. The dragons demand that you settle for nothing less than to live your legend. So there you go. I think when we talk about stories and how they can shape our power, are we stuck in our own story? I was stuck in my own story for a very long time. And, I was talking to someone this morning about, the whole being happy thing. And it's not always easy. It's really not always easy because, you know, um, when you are in a certain mindset for so long, it's a habit and it's not something that you'd prefer to live this more content happy life, but you're not always sure how to do it, and then when you do it, it doesn't feel right, or sometimes it feels forced. And I realized when I was talking today that it really took me a long time to really truly understand that the story I kept telling myself was that I deserve to be happy, I deserve to be happy, I deserve to be happy, but I wasn't living it because I got so focused on being happy and not living in this consistent, I don't know, whatever feeling, blah, meh, feeling that I was feeling from all the stuff I had to heal and everything I'd been through, doing the fake it till you make it, plus, having a dinged up mental health. It got so confusing and it got frustrating and it got irritating. But I started to tell myself a story that said, you know what? We're not always going to be happy. Sometimes we'll be sad. Sometimes we'll be angry. Sometimes we'll have those bliss filled moments that, just, transcend happiness. And sometimes we're just going to be irritated. And that's okay. That's okay. Because what I learned is as long as we don't live in those feelings, there's a seed over here called content. Being contented or having contentment. I don't know, whatever. Um, you, you think I'd have a better grasp on this vocabulary thing, but sometimes my brain just second guesses itself. But there is that seat of contentment, right? Where you're just sitting there and you're like, okay, okay, I don't have any feelings right now. And that was just it. Before I healed my trauma, I always had that underlying feeling of dread. And so when I started to move past that and I realized that's not the feeling I want to have anymore, I just thought there was always supposed to be this underlying feeling of happiness. I thought being content meant I was settling. Turns out no, being content means I'm good with the moment. I'm happy in that moment. I'm just or even just whatever in that moment. But I'm settled into that moment. That doesn't mean I have to live there. That doesn't mean I'm going to stay there. It just means that for that time, it's okay to not really feel anything. And it was a new experience for me. It was kind of mind blowing and a little bit wild. I gotta admit, it was kind of like, whoa, this is what it's like to just not feel anything, to just kind of, hmm. And that may not be for everybody, but I think in when we stop trying to be one thing or the other and just allow everything, it makes it a little bit easier. And one of the things we can do when it comes to that is just live in the moment. Okay. Now, a lot of people think living in the moment means, just being in excess of everything. No, living in the moment means just taking it one day at a time, right? And some people struggle with one day at a time. So, you can say, well, 1 hour at a time, one, you know, uh, time of the day at a time, the morning, noon, night, or one moment at a time, 1 minute at a time. Just, if you find yourself getting overwhelmed, just take a deep breath and remind yourself, just take it 1 minute at a time, one moment. Put one foot in front of the other and just see where it takes you. But that's the story that we want to tell. We don't always want to live in these venting stories or these gossipy stories or these other stories where it just kind of brings down the vibe, right? Make the story you were telling a good one. If you're venting about something or someone, don't live in that feeling. All right? Just, feel it, understand it, give it what it needs, and then let it go. But don't live there. You don't want to live in the bad feelings. And that's just it right here where it says, today be mindful of the stories you're telling yourself and the ones you're listening to from others. Are people constantly complaining? Just tell them, look, you know what, if you want things to change, you need to change your story, because it's always the same thing. And sometimes it's the same thing they're venting about, but a different situation, but the same people. And I get that too, because sometimes people will just, and it's all perception too. You can just sit there and go, well, fine, whatever, and sometimes you have to deal with it. So, but make sure that when you're telling this story, tell your good story. Live in your good story. All this other crap that comes flying at you, like I said, feel it, deal with it, let it go. Feel it, deal with it, let it go. Because it's not doing you any good. It is serving no purpose for you. Right? So let's go to the next card. Let me see. Do I have one in between there? There we go. The Shadow. This is the second to the last card. The Shadow. I like that one. I've actually done this in a reading that I did for a group I am a part of. And it was a really good shadow. A really good shadow. It was a really good card. The Shadow. If you carry a big light, you're going to cast a large shadow. And you must own both. Endeavor in this moment to understand that shadow elements are at work. Be diligent not to project onto others your own fears, inadequacies, or resentments. This is your opportunity not to abandon any part of yourself, including your own darkness. Own all of it. Take responsibility for your shadows and the limitations you put on yourself. Accountability is part of true power, as any dragon knows. So accountability is, and balancing that large shadow with that large light it's just that. It's balance. And doing the shadow work, I thought doing the shadow work meant removing all these shadow bits of me, but there's always going to be a shadow bit of me. There's always going to be that part of me that, just kind of remembers. But it's about balancing. It's about balancing the good with the bad, or the dark with the light. And it can be hard, it can be difficult, but I believe in all of you, because I know that if I can do it, anyone else can do it. And that's one of the reasons I do share my story, is because, I was telling the same person I said I was talking to earlier, it's just like, I want this person to just, not spend the next decade the way I spent, the decade of my 40s, just kind of, being all ridiculous and, well, not ridiculous, but being so stuck in my healing that I couldn't find a way out, because I was so afraid of embracing thing. I was so afraid of embracing life, embracing happiness, embracing being content, or embracing just going through my feelings, dealing with it, and letting it go. I didn't know how to do that, and I had to teach myself how to do that. So I feel like it's my lot in life to turn around and try to help people so they don't waste as much time as I did. Now, people sit there and go, well, you didn't waste your time. And I probably didn't. I think the whole point is that all that time I spent, I can tell people now, don't be me. Yes, it can be hard, but have the courage, have the bravery. I didn't have someone to tell me all this stuff. I mean, I have see people posting on, social media. I know people who have posted on social media. Some people will ask you how you're doing, but nobody ever wants to overstep, right? So I figure instead of overstepping directly at you, I'll just overstep on here. And if you want to watch it, great. Because that's up to you. Because I really don't think it's overstepping. I think what it is that we're finding a way to embrace this part of us that is scary, that is confusing, and that can be a little difficult to get through, but it just takes some bravery and courage. It just takes some encouragement from somebody. It just takes somebody sharing their story to know that we're not alone, that we're not the only person that's gone through this. And I think that to me is so important. I would have loved to have had that, but sometimes I think our purpose comes in many different ways. And maybe that was my purpose, was to figure this out and discover it and try to make it easier for other people. I can't do the work for you, and that's the hard part. But when I say make it easier for you, let you know that you're not alone. Let you know that, there's, it's okay to feel, and it's okay to feel something other than this underlying dread that's been caused by trauma. There's this underlying thing that says you don't deserve to be fully happy, because that's not true. Everybody does. Everybody does. Everybody with a good heart and a good soul, and it was like the other day when I was talking about the Pope. I got a message, and it was kind of like, you got to love the ignorant people, because they're the ones who need the most love. And it's like, oh, come on, but it's true. I think love is what brings us together. And, it may sound a bit hippie-ish, it may sound a bit flower childish, but, I think it's true, because what is hurting them so much that, they're just like this, and so, oh, sometimes it's hard to break learned traits, and we have to try to do that. So, card number 5. I thought I had 5, but there's 6. So, card number 5 of self care, the adventurer. The adventurer. So, be adventurous, right? So far we've had the fledgling, be curious. What story do you want to tell? The storyteller, and the shadow. And again, the shadow can go with all of this, because it's like, what story do you want to tell? I mean, when you really stop and think of it, shadow and the storytelling go together, because you want to create a good story for yourself. And that's part of self care. That's part of self care, is letting go of all the things you normally complain about. If you find yourself complaining about it over and over and over again, what do you need to do to fix it? What do you need to do to keep it from, just constantly being your story? So, the adventurer. There's no holding you back. Now is the time to leap, soar, explore. Take the risk. Get lost in the right direction. Travel, whether along the inner realms of psyche or the outer realms of experience, for the sake of your heart's bliss. Whatever is calling you forward is real and is asking for your sense of curiosity and adventure. There's no predicting how things will turn out except this: when we adventure, we not only discover new horizons, but we develop new eyes with which to see our own world anew. I like that, but I'm going to try to read this part again. Get lost in the right direction and travel. Travel, whether along the inner realms of your psyche or the outer realms of experience, for the sake of your heart's bliss. So whether you're going abroad or you're going within, and abroad doesn't mean far, but I mean, whether you're going on a trip or you're going on an inner trip, um, do it for the sake of your heart's bliss. Be adventurous. This card can also be part of the shadow work, right? Because you're adventuring inward. You're adventuring into a land that you may not know about, or that you've decided not to think about. I know that can be a little scary, but what are we as adventurers? We're taking those risks. We're, being curious and taking those risks. We're being the fledglings and failing spectacularly or failing gorgeously, because that's what self-care is all about. It's not just about the typical things we talk about all the time, sing in your car, drink your tea and look out on the porch, meditate, get a massage. Those are all wonderful things. They're all wonderful things, but we cover those all the time, right? What was some of the ones that we came up with over the last couple of weeks? go axe throwing, visit a museum, do something you wouldn't normally do, take yourself out to on a date, just you on a date, um, just all these other things. But that again, that's the outer stuff. Sometimes we need to go in. And for me, when I'm I miss London so much. I really do. I don't know why it's taken me so long to get back there, but I tell you, I feel like I found a part of myself there. Even though that was really, really the beginning of my healing journey all those years ago, uh, um, I know, see, I'm tripping over my words now. Even though it really was the beginning of my healing journey, um, I realized that, going there by myself, this was the first trip I'd ever taken alone. Okay, by myself, nobody with me, even sibling and my dad asked me, it's like, couldn't you have gone somewhere closer for your first trip alone? Now, mind you, I have some friends over there. So I know a couple that used to live out here. We're all hockey fans. And, so I went and visited them. And I knew that I had someone out there that, I could turn to just in case. But for the most part, and then of course, I know, right? Before I go on further, about 3 days after I got there, my coworker got there because he's actually from England to visit his family. So he and his wife were out there, and so I felt safe knowing that somewhere out there were people. But in the meantime, I often forgot about that. That just kind of stayed in the back of my head, and I was really kind of alone the whole time. I had to figure out the public transportation, which the bus, I had to figure out you have to hail a bus during the day when it's not rush hour. The tube. Oh my God, the tube. The poor guy that helped me that night was just like, I was like, he's all, you look like you're a little lost. And I'm all, I have no idea what I'm looking at. I said, this looks like a rat maze. And I didn't mean it in offense. I'm like, I don't mean any offense by that. It's just like, I feel like I'm waiting to find my way so I can get the piece of cheese at the end. He was just laughing. And he's all, oh, you're American. It's like, oh, great. It's like, how obvious am I? But but I asked him for help. I was so grateful. I was like, thank you so much. And don't forget to thank people, right? Don't be polite anywhere you go. I hate it. This is one of my big pet peeves. All right. I'm going to sidebar here for a second. This is one of my big pet peeves. I cannot stand it when I hold a door open for somebody and they just walk in and don't say thank you. Okay. It's like, I mean, I'm at that age. Well, actually, I can't even say I'm at that age because I've been doing this for decades where it's just like, you're welcome. I've been saying that since my 20s. I mean, it's just common courtesy. I'm not holding a door open for you so you say thank you, but it is kind of polite because I could let that door go in your damn face, you know? So, I mean, it's just, and it's not always, people always say, well, it's the younger people. It's not always the younger people. Sometimes it's the older people too. It's just like, I'm sorry, it is not my lot in life to hold the door open for you. Or when you hold the door open, right, and like 5,000 people go through, and you're just kind of like, okay. Sometimes my people get so mad at me. It's like, just let the door go. And it's like, I can't, because I don't want it to fall on some or, close on somebody. So I know, I know. And like I said, I know we don't do things to be thanked or for gratitude. We do it out of the kindness of our hearts. But I think the reason it's a pet peeve for me is because it doesn't take much to say thank you or even thanks. It doesn't. It's a very simple thing, and it's something I learned, and I think more people should learn. It's like, but I think sometimes they'll just, and I don't know, maybe they're introverts or something, but I mean, even a smile would be nice. But then you have these people with their earbuds in their ear, and I mean, you can still say thank you. Just pause your damn music and just say thank you. All right. So I don't know, maybe I'm just picky, but like I said, that's not my age. That has been me for a very long time because, I was raised with manners. But anyway, I know. Going back to the self care. Right, venting. See, venting. All right. But that's not the story I want to tell either. So a lot of times I'll just say, you're welcome, and then I'll leave. So I get my smart assiness in. But anyways, we are at the last one I picked was the artist. The artist. This one, look how cute it is. You're just about ready to drink and sip that tea, right? So I like the color too. It's a great day to be creative, no matter how artistic you believe yourself to be. Messages, insights, direction, and even wisdom can arrive from the flow that creativity generates. You don't have to have a goal in mind, nor do you need to make a masterpiece. Your life is the masterpiece, and your willingness to get into the right brain flow of curiosity and creativity helps align you with the genius waiting to be expressed on the canvas of your life. Wild dragon wing creative abandon is calling you right now. So answer. All of these go together hand in hand. They're telling you, be curious, just take risks. Don't worry if you fail. Have a good story to tell on those journeys. you know be the adventurer, create your own story. Again, whether it's you're going within or you're going to travel, just make it a good story and make it a good adventure. Make it something that you will remember, that will bring you joy and bring you the sparkles and all that stuff. Um, the artist, tap into yourself. I can't draw for a lick. I can't draw a lick of anything. Um, but I love colors. I love painting. I love all kinds of stuff. I'm not good at it, and I'm not, trying to put myself down when I say that. But I found kind of a happy medium. I found coloring books and pens, and I realized I may not be able to draw this, but the big draw for me when it comes to art is being able to color it in. I love art, and I think that's one of the reasons I love to see other people's art, is because this is a talent I do not have. And it's one I always wished I had. I got an A+ in art class in my senior year, Art 1 and Art 2. And I asked my teacher, I'm all, why on earth did you give me an A+? And I said, and he's all, for effort. He's all, for effort. He's all, and I know that you're not the greatest artist in the class. And no, it didn't hurt my feelings, guys, because we had already talked about that. But he's all, you never stopped trying. You just kept doing whatever it is you did. In fact, I was a senior in 1991, and at the time we were going through the Gulf War. And I actually got, I think, second place or third place in the art competition for all of my teachers' classes. I had made an abstract 3D flag, American flag, and it was, just chaos. I wish I had it now, because never mind. But anyways, but yeah, but I was very proud of that. It was probably one of the one things I was most proud of. My mom, in her infinite wisdom, got rid of a lot of my stuff. I had nowhere to put it, and she's like, well, if you don't come get it, I'm gonna get rid of it. And I kind of wish she didn't, and I don't know why she did, but they're long gone now, and it's history, and it's somewhere in a landfill. But when I think back on those days, and I think back about, even my trip to London, I think about all the things that I tried to do, whether I failed spectacularly, failed gorgeously, or succeeded in one way or the other. I came home alive from my trip overseas, so I must have been doing something right. I got an A+ in my class, for art, even though that's not my forte. I I I don't want to pat myself on the back and say I'm a good writer. Other people say I'm a good writer, and they like to read my stuff, but I've got a little bit of that George McFly syndrome. But I think the takeaway for all this with the self-care is to mind the story you want to tell. You know, one of my favorite quotes that I actually have on my bigger computer. I have Little Blue at my dad's house. I keep Little Blue at my dad's house, and so I don't have to lug it back and forth. And I keep Big Red at home. Yes, I name my stuff. In fact, my phone is named Maxine, so because it's a Pro Max, and so I named her Maxine. But I know. But and it's people think it's silly. I don't care. I really don't care. I used to, and I used to, just kind of like, well, I used to make excuses like, I don't care anymore. It's like, well, I even named my dad's car, and I'm like, I don't want to hear it, but, you know, too bad. I named my dad's car. And, but, oh, sorry, I'm straying. I think the biggest takeaway that we can take here is that we're never going to know what we're capable of unless we become curious, unless we become that adventurer, unless we become the storyteller of our own life, unless we become curious. And in order to do all those things, we have to be that fledgling. We have to be that little bird trying to find its way out of the nest and fly. There was, yeah, I was going to share a story I saw on one of the BBC documentaries, but that's just too grim. So I'm just going to say, not all birds make it. All right. And by that, I don't mean you're not going to make it. What I'm saying is, you're never going to know unless you try. Okay. You're never going to know unless you try. If you don't take that leap, how are you going to know if you can fly or not? And if you don't take that leap, it may be the one thing you're absolutely great at, but you're afraid to do it because you're afraid to fail. Doesn't matter. I'm glad I was reminded, thank you, Spirit, whoever reminded me. I'm grateful I was reminded about art class because it reminded me that even though I wasn't the best artist in the class, I got an A plus because I never stopped trying. I was always trying to better my own work. I never compared myself to my other friends. One of my dearest friends in high school was in my class, and this girl was a class A artist. I mean, she'd look at you and just draw you. I was I don't have anyone to play with anymore, but I was big into Dungeons and Dragons a long time ago, and she actually drew um from what I thought my character would look like, that I had chosen. And she drew her for me. And she came in one day and she saw, I was thinking about us when we were talking about, the other day about your character and la la la. Her name was Marilyn. And so I drew her for you. And oh my God, it was amazing. It was amazing. She was a half barbarian, half elf. I know, I told you. It was so cute. The other day I was out with my friend and she's like, yeah, Shelly's like a nerd of everything. And I really am a nerd of everything. I'm like, nerd of sports, nerd of writing, nerd of books, nerd of nerds, comics, and all that stuff. So, and a beer nerd. Because someone's, are you a beer nerd? She's like, she's a nerd of everything. It's like, I'm pretty well rounded. And I had no idea how well rounded I was. So don't quit on yourself. Get out there, practice your self care, take the risks. Don't take dumb risks. All right, that's my point. Don't take dumb risks. But if there's something that you really want to try, there's something you really want to do, try it, do it. If you don't like it, at least you tried, right? And I need to take my own advice as well. So I hope everybody has a wonderful, wonderful day. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a happy Self Care Wednesday. I will see you back, not here, but at home on Friday for the Aloha perspective. I'm not sure if I'm going to do an oracle reading yet, or we're just going to jump right in. I may do an oracle reading because tomorrow's a travel day for me. So, I mean, it's not like I'm traveling far, but I have a lot of unpacking and whatnot to do because I've been here for so long. So, yeah, or I may just talk about my experience. I don't know. Stay tuned. Who knows what we're going to do. If you don't like the oracle stuff, you can always just hop off, but you never know what messages might come through. So I always tell people to watch the oracle stuff. It's not telling you your future, but it's giving you good guidance. So, like I said, no idea what I'm going to watch. No idea what we're going to talk about, but I do have it written in my book because Sammy and I talked about it last week. Bucky Bunny will be making his appearance. That's right. I talked about this one little thing I've had for as long as I can remember since I was a little kid. It's a puppet. It's a little raggedy now, rabbit, but I love him. I love him. I love him. I love him. And he sits on my bedpost since he's a puppet. I can just hang him on there. But yeah, love Bucky Bunny. So Bucky Bunny will be making his debut on the Aloha Perspective come Friday. So again, have a great day, everybody. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you on Friday. Have a wonderful day.